Howdy, I'm Mike Penfold with Our Montana, and I've been working for the last year with friends and colleagues over in Wyoming, the Fort Phil Kearny Bozeman Trail Association, to get the Bozeman Trail designated as a National Historic Trail. This trail has such an amazing history of conflict with the Indians, the last gold rush trail to a mining camp, the big herd that came in, really the first big herd of cattle that was brought into Montana. This is a piece of national history, it's a piece of Wyoming history, it's a piece of Montana history, and it deserves to be designated as a National Historic Trail. This summer, Dave McKee from the Fort Phil Kearny Bozeman Trail Association and I went to Virginia City for the unveiling of a new sign right at the end of the Bozeman Trail. It was a neat event, and Dave McKee gave a little presentation there that I'd like to have you hear. He tells about what we're trying to do in getting this trail designated.
And we're very fortunate to have some visitors with us who have an interest in seeing that the Bozeman Trail is declared a National Historic Trail. The Santa Fe Trail, the Oregon Trail have been designated. It has to be a bill before Congress, the U.S. Congress, in order to do that. And so we have Mike Penfold and Dave McKee from Fort Phil Kearny, which is on the middle of the Bozeman Trail close to Sheridan in Wyoming, who are going to tell us what our part is going to be in seeing that the Bozeman Trail gets recognized as a National Historic Trail. So I'm going to invite Dave to tell us what we can do, what our role is.
Well, good morning. I'm Dave McKee and I'm from Sheridan, Wyoming, and I'm president of the Fort Phil Kearny Bozeman Trail Association. We're a nonprofit 501(c)(3). I want to congratulate the Virginia City Preservation Commission for this really nice event this weekend and for the wonderful sign, and really want to thank Larry for the invitation to come up and join you for this. So just congratulations on your commitment to preservation and education. That's certainly our goal too. So I guess I want to start. I'm an archaeologist by training, and one of the things that I do is I go into classrooms, and one of the lessons I do is entitled, Why is the Past Important? And what we ask the children to do is we ask them to bring an item from home that would tell a story about their history or their family's history. And then we ask them to share their family stories with each other. Once we've done that, then I get out the artifacts from archaeological sites and we look at arrow points or a piece of obsidian from an archaeological site. And we talk about how those artifacts are messengers from the past. And that each of those artifacts, if you know how to look, can tell you a story about past lifeways and past cultures. Just like the items that those kids brought from home. So then we finish the lesson by having a discussion about how these messengers from the past, a photo album from their home or an arrowhead from an archaeological site, inform us about our past, and they inform us about who we are as an individual, as a family member, as a member of a community, or as a member of this nation. And I know that everybody here today, we all share that same commitment to informing our current and future generations about who we are. And that's by preserving and educating about those messengers from the past. So to that goal, our organization, Fort Phil Kearny Bozeman Trail Association, in partnership with the nonprofit organization Our Montana and my partner in crime, Mike Penfold, have undertaken an effort to seek listing of the Bozeman Trail as a National Historic Trail. We think there's some really good reasons for doing that listing. First of all, it's a way to make sure that we preserve that history and the national significance of the Bozeman Trail for current and future generations. So just that documentation. Our second reason for seeking that listing is to increase interest and visitation at our museums and our historic sites where we have public access. And of course, for us, in support of those sites, increased visitation, increased revenue. But it meets our mission of expanding education and preserving that. Third reason for us, we do grant writing in support of these historic sites. So we think National Historic Trail listing will strengthen our grant applications, and through that enhance education opportunities along the Bozeman Trail corridor in Montana and Wyoming. And fourth, and I think very relevant, if we can get increased interest, more visitation, that's a direct benefit to our local economies. So I'm all about supporting the community, western community I live in, and I'm sure you do too. To get national designation listing, we're following steps in the National Trails Act. So the first step is for us to ask our U.S. congressional delegation for legislation that would implement a feasibility study as to whether national significance listing is warranted. That would be undertaken by the Secretary of Interior. If that legislation is passed and they do the feasibility study, their team would analyze a number of criteria for national significance. One would be from historic maps and documents and histories, can they identify a continuous route? And we've got a map here that shows the continuous route. It doesn't have to be intact wagon ruts. It simply needs to be a historically documented continuous route, and we got that. They'll also look at current and potential recreation and educational opportunities along the trail corridor. What museums do we have? What historic sites can we visit? So what are the opportunities there? Another thing they'll look at is, again, economic benefits. So when they do a feasibility study, they do community meetings, it's full public participation, and they'll do a formal comment period, sort of a government thing, but what they're trying to do is hear and measure public desirability in our local communities for that national designation. So that's a key for them. If at the end of their feasibility study they find that the Bozeman Trail is worthy of national designation, which of course we do, then we would go to Congress for the second and final time and ask for legislation that formally designates the Bozeman Trail as a National Historic Trail. One thing that's key for us in Wyoming, and I'm pretty sure it's the same in Montana, the vast majority of the historic route is on private. So for final legislation for national designation, we do not want, and we want language in there that there would be no purchase of private land and there would be no federal overreach on private land. That's a big one for us, and if you go to the National Trails Act, you can see previous trails that have been listed and the language is in there. And then as a footnote, this spring a bill was introduced in Congress for the final designation of the Chisholm and Western Stock Trails in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. In a small world moment, I found that the person leading that is an old high school mate of mine. So funny how that works out. But anyway, they have specific language on the floor in that bill with extra language about protecting private property rights. I bring it up because most of the trail routes are private, and that's an issue and a concern for people. We want to be good neighbors. I live in that community, and so that's what we're about there. For the last 10 months, before going to Congress for legislation, we've been doing the public outreach. So we've done organizations, we've done industry in Wyoming. The Mining Association, Petroleum Association, and Livestock Association are my first 3 stops, and county commissioners. But we've also reached out to the historic preservation groups, historical societies, museums. So we've been doing that for about 10 months. Of course, we reached out to the congressional staffs, and we've been in discussions with them. And about 2 months ago, we had a 30-minute Zoom call with Senator Cynthia Lummis from Wyoming, so that we could explain what our proposal is and look for her support. And tribes. So we've reached out to the Lakota, we've reached out to the Northern Cheyenne, the Crow, Eastern Shoshone. We reached out to all the tribes whose history are tied to the Bozeman Trail and the events around it. One of the things that we're really fortunate to have is an advisor in our group named Donovan Sprague. And Donovan is a Miniconjou Lakota. He's a published author. He's published a number of histories. And I've known him for a long time. He's a direct descendant of High Backbone, who was one of the leaders at the Fetterman battle, and Hump, who was engaged at the Little Bighorn. So he's advising us, and we're in discussions with the other groups. I just had the delegation from the Northern Cheyenne down on June 24th, and we did a walk through the Fetterman battle site. And I've got a delegation from Crow coming down here in a couple of weeks. And the Crow are pretty significant because a big chunk of the Bozeman Trail goes across Crowland. So we really want their involvement, and Senator Lummis, in talking to her, she said it'll be really important to have the Crow on board. So we knew that, and it was actually nice to hear her say that. So we're working on it. So we've been doing the outreach. We've been doing a lot of presentations to groups and organizations. Got all our stuff loaded on our website, fortphilkearney.com, and Our Montana the same. And so as a result of our outreach, we've had some news articles in Montana and Wyoming newspapers, so people are hearing about us. In Wyoming, we did about 260 letters to large landowners who have the trail crossing them, ranchers. And we've had some discussions with folks. So we're trying to make ourselves known. So as a result, letters of support for the feasibility study. And again, the feasibility study comes first. And if that's suitable, then you do designation. So the feasibility study is a chance for all of us to be involved. So we've gotten letters of support going to Congress from organizations and individuals. And we're still in consultation with the tribes. In talking to the Crow, that trail is not the Bozeman Trail. It's been used much before Bozeman showed up, and they have a name for it called Trail That Goes South. And they have a couple of sites along it that are really important to them, where they would get ready, get organized to take a trip south. So they have some oral history, and that indigenous route, also an indigenous route called the Great Northern Trail, and the Blackfeet talk a lot about it. And I think it ties right into the Bozeman down in here. So, yeah, a lot of indigenous trails before Bozeman decided to promote the route. So back in 2002, National Park Service and the Western History Association did a study of about half a dozen western trails. And they found that the Bozeman Trail was of national historic significance, and the criteria that they pinned that on was Trans-Mississippi military campaigns, which in short for us is Red Cloud's War on the Bozeman Trail. That coalition of the tribes and the success in getting the trail closed under the Laramie Treaty of '68, and Forts Reno and Kearney and C.F. Smith abandoned. We think, if with additional study, there's huge opportunity to include national significance for the Bozeman Trail for mining, for trade, for settlement. So there's a number of areas they haven't even touched yet that we think, but we already have at least the military campaigns and Red Cloud's War in hand. Well, thanks for having me. I'm sticking around because I've never been here before, so give me a shout, give me a holler, tell me a story. Thank you. Thanks, Larry.
So there you have it. Thank you, Dave McKee. Several years ago, there was a PBS special focused directly on the Bozeman Trail. It's got a lot of good history on it. It's a good thing to watch. The other thing, if you want more information on what we're doing for our Montana and the Fort Phil Kearny Bozeman Trail Association, we have a website shown here on the screen. You're welcome to get on there, and there's also contact information there if you'd like to get a hold of us. We wish you the best. Thank you.